what we'll do now, first of all, we started already the panel discussion, but I want to invite, and you are invited to sit there as part of the panel, and I invite the other partners of the panel discussion. First of all, Professor Theng, Leng from Singapore. She has many, many titles. She is the head of the aging, and she is the director of the research strategy and coordination in the university, at the president office, and many, many more. And I wanted, we started to discuss already, but we want to look on the broadband of the lessons and applications that we want to take from nature. I think we are missing one chair, no? Oh, okay, okay. And no, I will give you a microphone and you can sit there. Okay. די כבר. So we started to say that we want to go at the broadband from the aging. As I say, that the Dead Sea is a beta site, a wonderful beta site for aging. And if we are talking about aging, we're actually talking about almost all area of science. And that's one. And then we had some clues already in Alan's lecture about the pharma, and we have a representative here of the pharma. So now you can protect and tell them that everything is not right. And then we have Dana from the UMBC, and we will talk about that as well. But really the idea and the outcome that we are looking forward is joint collaboration. As many projects as we can come out here and create. So next time or next year that we are meeting, we will present our own project that came out here. And in order to do so, we started already. We had all the 2 days of lectures where we were talking about the need. Professor Weinstock talked about the need of data analysis. We were talking about AI. We were talking about tools, other tools. And there are people here from data science, from artificial intelligence, from biology, from all area of science, from humanities. And we ended by politically and economic and world crisis and threats, from climate change to we just heard today 3 major problems. So that actually what we want to tackle, the broadband of all what this place can teach us, but much more. So, Theng, you're the first. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mira, for inviting me here. And thank you for everyone. I think for the presentations, I've learned so much. And also with Alan's, lecture, I begin to think about things in, bigger, broader issues. I think one of the, I just want to pick up on a comment in terms of, science and technology for humanity. In fact, NTU, Nanyang Technological University, just launched this institute on Monday. And recognizing that is very important, because we have our engineers, we have our scientists, they're doing work, they could be actually doing things in silos without understanding, the bigger implications for humanity. Yeah, so, so that is something that, is actually taking place in Singapore. We are very, very keen to go into, looking at even global dialogues like this. Which I think Alan brought it up, to say that, how do we change, mindset? If people do not believe in science, my background is in human-computer interaction. I have to do a lot of user studies. I interact with the users. If I were to stay in my lab and just build systems, it's very, very likely that the systems will not be useful and usable. It is only when I get down to, understanding the needs, the requirements, to be able to actually feel the empathy, to know, what these systems are good for, not just from the perspective of a scientist or a designer. So I just want to, emphasize this point that, engaging with the people that we, that we want to build science for is very important. I would like to also highlight one, one example that I had with a student, an intern who came to NTU. And one, I asked this student to say that, oh, please design an Excel game, because that's what I design an Excel game for older people, to be engaged in regular exercise. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, old people are troublesome. I was like, okay, but I didn't want to reprimand him. I said that, okay, for the next 3 weeks, can you please follow the research team to go down to the community centers, carrying out studies, and, and he was helping out. 3 weeks later, he came back, he said, I am excited. I have a lot of ideas to design games for the elderly. So it is actually providing that platform for people to understand, needs and requirements and interact with people, to have the heart, not only just, have the mind to build, something for humanities, but also the heart is important. So I just want to say that, it's important to, to get people to be involved in, looking at things, that we are designing for. In my capacity as, research, director, trying to actually bring the STEM and non-STEM colleagues together. The challenge is not in that people do not want to work. It's just that we may lack the vocabularies to be able to conduct the conversation. And if there are platforms like this for, a bigger understanding, of the different things that, we do, to respect science, to respect another person's, contributions, to be able to actually see how we can integrate. I think important thing is to be able to integrate, to come up with, solutions to global problems, to global issues. I think that would be actually excellent. Yeah, I'm going to stop here and pass the mic over.
You represent yourself for Shelley.
I'll do it. My name is Rino Rappuoli. I'm from Siena, Italy. And my current position is Chief Scientist, GSK Vaccines. I've been doing vaccines for my entire life. I started science in the 1980s. And always try to get a balance between science and application of science. I like science, I love it, but I never felt happy just publishing a paper, because the paper allows you to do something, but that remains a paper. It's not useful to society. So that's the reason why I've been working in companies all the time, because that's only in companies that you do the next stage. At the next stage, sometimes, while discovery may take 2 or 3 years, sometimes translating the discovery into a product or something that people can use can take another 15, 20 years. And I've been working with different companies. I've been working for Chiron Corporation. I've been working for Novartis, now working for GSK. And whatever was the company that allowed me to bring the science to the things. My field are vaccines. And in order to do vaccines, you need to be multidisciplinary. There's no way you need very basic science, and you need all the other science that support you. And being here these 3 days has been fantastic, because really I could see areas where I've been interacting, areas I would like to start to interact, and areas that I see in the future are not yet interacting, but I think we need to. And I met already some good friends. I think I'm going to work with them in the near future. Now, in my career, I've been developing vaccines for pertussis. I've been working on vaccines for influenza, and influenza is still a big thing because we don't have yet a good vaccine. We would like a universal influenza. I've been working vaccines for meningococcus. Tomorrow I will talk about vaccines for aging society, and so on. But if you work on vaccines, you do work on a broader thing, which is infectious diseases. And infectious diseases are, one of the big things we're discussing tomorrow, has been mentioned here, is aging. Aging is kind of, the aging society is something that is, is a nice problem to have, I think, at least in the Western world, because in just 1900, life expectancy was less than 50 years. Now it's 85, 80, depending on the countries. So we are very lucky. And a lot of the reason why you're able to live so long is because we conquer infectious diseases. And that's basically done with vaccines, antibiotics, and hygiene. And I've been lucky to work on vaccines. That's one of the things I like to do. Now that we make people aging, now the next question, how do we make them aging well so the quality of life is going to be good? So these are the things I've been doing. Working on vaccines, basically, as I said, is a multidisciplinary thing. So there was the Samuel Stapp was here talking about nanowires, nanotechnologies, self-assembly things, and basically lipid nanoparticles. Well, back in the 10 years ago, I started to work on novel vaccines that are not yet a reality, but I think they will, which are nucleic acid vaccines, RNA vaccines. And delivery was one of the most important things. And one of the things I used back in 2011-12 was basically these nanoparticles made by lipids, and this discovered now that he had been working on those things. I just got them through the fourth collaborators, but it was amazing. So basically, we do work with those things. We do interact with the microbiome every day. And the question you've heard from Maria Grazia Pizza the other day, she was talking about whether vaccines are going to interact with the microbiome, but we have much more bigger problems. Like we know the microbiome is essential for shaping the immune system, the early days of life. And today we understand how important it is, and the question is, we use antibiotics in the early stage of life, and are we doing the right thing? Probably are doing the right thing in the short term, but what about the long term? And should we be using vaccination instead in many of those things? So there are a lot of questions about the microbiome, and we use vaccines that work 90% well in the Western world, and they work only 40% well in the low-income countries. Probably it's because they have a different microbiome. So how do we interact with this? So basically, there are a lot of things that we touch every day that are multidisciplinary. And one of the things which is obviously is becoming extremely important, big data, how we analyze them, statistics, all these kind of things. And that's what we deal with every day. Some of the diseases are changing. And sometimes doing classical efficacy trials is impossible. Can we use the new technologies, real world data, new statistics to do trials which would be otherwise impossible? So, and I think that's an area that's evolving everywhere, but for us it's extremely important. So there are all these kind of things that I think are going to become very important. And I think this morning urbanization and global urbanization was mentioned. We do vaccines for Ebola. And right now it's happening in Congo. It's basically Ebola is coming out. It's a totally different way of transmission. It probably is due to urbanization. Doesn't go according to the things we knew. As a new ways. So basically, new urbanization, the new world is going to change the way infectious diseases are going to be transmitted. So how we deal with those. And those, I mean, computer modeling, all these things will be extremely important because all these things are changing. So, so basically, thank you, Mira. I think this has been incredibly good meeting. I had many more interactions, collaborations that, and ideas of collaborations that I think came out than I thought, and I learned a lot. And if I have another second, I would like to say another thing. In addition to working as chief scientist for GSK, I'm also the kind of president of the, let's say, Toscana Life Sciences District, which is a work in Siena, which is part of Tuscany. And in Tuscany, there are 3 universities, Siena, Florence, and Pisa. And we got together and we put together what we call Global Life Science District. And we try to put together university, the local biotechs, and create a kind of ecosystem that will allow the discoveries, the science, the things to become useful to society. And one of the things I had in mind I'd like to do while I'm here is basically to see whether it's going to be able to put together a district from Tuscany with the District of Israel, and we can have meetings and discuss these things in the future.
So thank you very much. We have here the Dean of the Life Sciences, if he's still here, of Tel Aviv University, that was chairing the further session. And sure, you know, the whole idea, and I thought we will do it in the second round, but you were first, to each of you to suggest what are the projects that we, like tomorrow morning, can join forces and try to work together. And just to remark, because you said about what you said about the infection disease and so on, and drugs. So first of all, we mentioned yesterday, and we talked about, you know, penetration drugs through the skin, given the mud that we have here at the Dead Sea. We were talking about the environment. You know, you talked about infection disease, the environment and the pollution and the allergenic are very relevant to that as well. You know, and where do you do several intervention, operation and all that. So, you know, we just have, and this is the mission that we want to do here, is really try and define and, you know, try collaboration, whether it's in a university level or a company or just group to submit proposal and try to work together. And I think the 2 days we mentioned a lot of topics that we have to summarize and see how we go. But I want to first give Dana the opportunity to present.
All right. I don't want to hit the thing. Right. Hi, so I'm Dana Bradely. I'm at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Baltimore. I'm a new dean at the Erickson School of Aging Studies. So I'm one of, there are 3 schools of aging studies in the U.S., and that means that we sort of think about soup to nuts issues about aging. And it's relevant because, I mean, it's relevant to every single one of us in the room because we're not dead yet. Right? So people go, oh, aging, gerontology. And I can't tell you how many times I get a response from a student just like that. They go, oh, you know, I don't want to study. And then we have a conversation about that. And to get to why it is so relevant. So many of you will be joining us tomorrow, I think, at the Healthy Aging Institute. And for me, it's a chance to talk about what makes the Erickson School particularly special. So there are a number of university specialties and departments and colleges, but not schools of aging in the world. But what we do, which is particularly relevant for this kind of interdisciplinary collaboration, is that we focus on translational fluency. And that's something that probably UMBC does very, very well. UMBC is a young school. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. So in terms of the U.S. schools, that's pretty young. We're a Research 1 school, so everything we do is based in a research practice. But we connect research to application. So Baltimore, And not everyone knows where Baltimore is, but it's really in the tech corridor between, say, New York and Washington, D.C. And so we're close to all the major policy centers for good. Maybe a little complicated these years, this time, right, in the U.S. But what we really focus on is taking applied knowledge and translating that to applications that have real-world potential. So let me give you an example from the aging space, which is what I do. So we focus on gerontology, right, which is the scientific study of aging. And so we have some gerontologists in the room. You're going to see a lot more of them who may or may not define themselves that way tomorrow. And I should tell you, I'm a historian. So for folks that are looking for the humanities perspective, I'm a gerontological historian. All right, so based in science or humanities, which I would argue converges there. Then the business side. And I don't mean necessarily for profit, although there are a number of different ways to take an idea and make it have an application. So at the Erickson School, we teach, without being a business school, for-profit, nonprofit, and governmental ways to take an idea based in science and turn it into something that can have an impact on a population. Again, reflecting the values of UMBC. So that means, and then we work within the policy sphere. Because, and again, think about everything we've learned in 2 days. Whatever we do in the lab, wherever our lab is, it has implications in culture and politics. And I was really struck yesterday. I will never look at a flight of birds the same way anymore. I mean, how can you not look at birds that are going this way to this way or this way to this way and wonder how many countries or temporary political boundaries did these birds fly over and keep flying?
No visa.
Yeah, no visa, right? Right. No. Okay, I'm thinking of the U.S. No wall to have to navigate, right? And, right. Thank you for laughing. I'm not sensitive to. In the States, we're not laughing, these days. So, but what a model, right? But again, so we focus on the science, the business, and the context, which we would think of in terms of policy, because if we can't navigate all those three frames with fluidity, then we stay in our silos, right? So, and there were so many good ideas, and I just was so overjoyed, and thanking Milo, and for the kind of resources in the room, both in terms of money, but also in generosity of spirit, have allowed exactly what thrills me about going to work every day is that translational fluidity and the ability to learn to speak each other's languages. And so I felt like I was kind of practicing my craft by listening to so many experts. So from my perspective, and so my talk tomorrow, and I'll do a little promo, a tiny little promo on that. I'm going to talk about 5 trends in the space of the business of aging that are international and we should all be thinking about. But they do have to do a little bit with that demography, that question of, is demography destiny? Right, so I'm trying to think, do we have any demographers speaking tomorrow? I'm going to look.
Don't have, but we have in the audience.
In the audience, right. Okay, right. So you're nodding at me. And there's a big discussion. Does it mean just because we have this silver, and I call it a silver opportunity in terms of the aging of the population. So across almost all countries, we have an increase in life expectancy, right? So we've sort of nodded at that a little bit. And an increase in the number of people who are over a certain age. And so from my perspective, I often talk about the longevity economy, which is, we haven't talked, I don't think anyone said that the past couple of days here. But we look at that as people over the age of 50. Right? And so in the U.S. Last year, that was $7 trillion. That's a lot of money. And that is in terms of what people are buying, using, purchasing, and includes also social benefit obligations. And I think we can do the numbers, we can calculate them for almost, just about every country. But I see that as an opportunity So in terms of when we think about new advances in the lab, however we're doing that, what are the possible, positive effects? And so I think we'll debate that tomorrow. It's not just living longer, it's living better. And how do you define what better is? And is it based in individual morals or culture or values? And how does each society sort of navigate that? And so, but in order to do that successfully, we have to be, flexible and fluid in the language we use. And so you'll hear me talk a little bit more about this in terms of translational research, but also how do we go between different frames to both define our challenge or problem, but also the resources that come to play. All right.
Thank you, Dana. And I think, first of all, I want to give the audience the opportunity even to ask questions before, but I think the essence of all of this meeting, and I think also the meeting tomorrow, because aging, and I must tell you, my emphasis is not longevity, but rather quality of life, really, because the numbers doesn't count, but not how long you live, but what is your quality of life. And this was the emphasis of last year when we established the healthy aging. Not because there are many efforts to make us live longer, but the question is, what is the real quality of life? And that's the main issue. And this issue, just a minute, this issue is a very broad band, and yes, we will have tomorrow people talking about the economics point of view and so on. But I want to come back first, before I'm giving to Alan Leshner, that actually you established, I remember that the way I met you many years ago, I listened to you, I didn't meet you really, regarding the third generation, regarding converging technology with MIT, the big conference, the AAAS, and that was, in a way for me, somebody dared to say what should be said, or the change that has to be made. And I think speaking about aging, but not only, our quality of life, the benefit of all, the money that we put in science that has to be translated. And that's what we want to do. We want to translate it. I think at Tel Aviv University we have a lot, but anywhere to justify the effort that are putting in for the benefit of all, of each and every one, while bridging all area of science, from art, and that's what we'll see tomorrow, from art to music, to smart cities, to cybersecurity, AI, whatever we need to make it the right way and bridge the knowledge between the different area. That's my theme, but I wanted to hear your reaction before, as the one who initiated that.
I don't think I initiated it, but I'll take credit if you want. Never don't take credit. It's a life principle. But I do have a thought about collaboration, because this morning was really a wonderful example of multidisciplinary collaboration going on, between the humanities and social science and natural sciences, whatever those differences are. So it's not just an issue of language, and the ability to talk to each other in commonly understandable languages. I think what I've been struck by in thinking about the conversations here is how much of it is really shared values, norms, and respect. And it sounds funny, but I've been in the scientific community a long time, and it's very interesting to watch the pecking order that exists, but it also exists across classes. And if we really want to integrate the humanities and the sciences and the whatevers for the benefit of everyone, we're going to have to get rid of our arrogance and our condescension to the not us's. And I recently have become more and more conscious of it as I've watched this phenomenon that Mira just referred to called convergence. So convergence is basically the integration of what used to be called multidisciplinary science, and it's an obsession from MIT, and every president and leader at MIT has been obsessed with it. But it's basically the notion of bringing all the disciplines together, and actually Dr. Trent's talk this morning was an example of it, of an attempt to integrate all the different pieces. But it's incredibly difficult to do when, physicists think biologists do mush, and biologists defensively think social scientists are sort of squishy, and other people think humanities people make it up as they go along. First of all, none of that is true. Each set of disciplines has its own verification techniques, and they work. But if we really want to do this, we're going to have to tackle those questions, and we're going to have to confront instances of that kind of disciplinary arrogance or disciplinary condescension in a concrete way. So I don't know if that is worth saying, but I felt like saying it, so I said it.
Thank you, and I think we will have, and I said it many years ago, and I even discussed it with you, that we'll have, if we want to do that, the real convergence, we will have to change the structure of the academy in a way, and to promote the professors in a different way, and so on. And I'm sorry, but we said it. I'm very young, but more than 23 or 30 years ago, but we are still on the way. So, yeah.
Actually, I'm not asking a question. I'm just trying to respond to what you said. You said that please make some suggestions about projects which can be integrative. There is a danger in doing what I'm about to do, because whenever you do something like that, the organizer says, okay, you do it. So that's why most of the people keep their mouths shut. But the reason I'm making a suggestion is because I have absolutely no ability to do what I'm going to suggest. But I really think that is a great idea. And here is the reason I'm telling you. All this discussion is about the health effects of the Dead Sea and good effects and so on. I will propose health and many effects. I am proposing that you start a project which will be called the Health of Dead Sea. The health of Dead Sea is in great danger. And I saw so many presentations. I really feel that I saw so many presentations. That means right in Tel Aviv University and in the world, there's so much expertise on the hydrology, on the geology, on the climate change of this. And I think we need to create a voice that something needs to be done. I think we are facing a crisis. In fact, I was so amazed that how one after the other, everybody just said, oh, it's going 1 meter down every year. Okay, next slide. I mean, it's just a crisis. So I will propose that it will become a very important topic for your activities. If the health of the Dead Sea, and if you could integrate people, one of the projects where you will be talking, discussing, presenting, and so on. That's all, but don't ask me to do it.
First of all, I will ask you to join us if we'll do it. And actually, that was one of the reasons of establishing this Dead Sea Research Center, further to other topics. And we had even a world, trying to a worldwide, trying to bring people to be aware of that internally in this region and worldwide. And yes, but that's, do that is essential, but not sufficient. We need more.
I'd like to make 2 comments. One related to going from the academia to the field and making that connection with reality. So there is a program that was established in Stanford called SPARK. And now it's SPARK even in Singapore. You have SPARK, and in Australia, and even in Israel in 3 universities. So this is a very good mechanism to educate researchers to go out and meet, their target and get purpose for what they're doing. And the other point related to aging. So I taught entrepreneurship at the Technion for a number of years and reached the conclusion that I need to start earlier. And actually, a few weeks ago, I finished the first course I ran at a high school in Haifa this is like 9th and 10th grade students on the challenges of third age. And they had to come with the, identifying challenges from their experience, family experience, whatever, and come up with solution. And the reason I did it is for twofold. One is entrepreneurship will be a skill that they will need when they grow up. And the second one is because they will have to deal with their parents. And it's better that they start early.
Thank you. Tomorrow we will deal with both, okay?
I've done two major things in my scientific life which ignited or resonated in newspapers and so on. One was the cloning of the first metastasis-inducing gene and showing that when you transfer it into non-metastatic tumors, it prompts them to start metastasizing. And the other thing was that we challenged the pharma industry by a innovation economic analysis where we showed that there are at least 124 different ways to target Alzheimer's, and the pharma industry is just looking at 4 of them. And you know what happens is you get calls by journalists, and then they want to have a story out of that. And you try to say, the first thing is, you want to make clear that it's complicated, because it was complicated. It took a lot of time to get there and so on, but they don't want to hear that. They want to have stuff that is in very short and brief terms. I was also involved in the preparation at a G8 summit, or preparation of a G8 summit at that time, for the global agenda against Alzheimer's. That was under the British presidency. And again, it was about not emphasizing on, the challenge that is ahead of us or so, but giving or communicating a glimpse of hope that in 2025 or whatever, we'll have a drug against Alzheimer's and so on. This is how it works, The time constants, the world I live in, and I spent really my entire life on translational science, is in the 10s and 20s of years. What politics wants is something that they can use for, actually, you see that now in Germany for all the people who are Germans here, the calls that now went out on AI. Why are they so under pressure? Ultra short notice and so on, because we have elections very soon, and they want to have good news. And politics is buying good news from science. And I think one of the important things with all these discussions here is one of the important messages to other stakeholders in society is we need time for that. Be patient, don't expect these breakthroughs and the healing the world and save the world and so on, because it is simply typically taking time. One of the Planck Wirkungsquantum, so the Planck constants of science is a PhD thesis. It takes 3 to 5 years. This is the time constant we have for new insights in science. And we must not forget about that. Politics wants to have it in 3 months, latest 6 months or so. And we are doing stuff in years.
I would just want to tell you, maybe if we join forces and not be so, vertically, maybe we can shorten the time. But also, you're right, but even in science there are politics, like the big, great words that buzzwords, personalized medicine, could you really provide? Big data, do we really have? All those buzzwords. So we are using that, and that's also politics. But I do believe that if we join forces and if we don't reinvent the technology in each area but itself, but rather share, we might be better off. We have to learn to do that.
I have a question for the panel about this, what you just talked about, and that is, when I mentioned the Apollo mission in my talk this morning, I was talking about Maslow's pyramid of needs and the foundation being at risk right now. The Apollo mission was Kennedy, a president of the United States, competing with the Soviet Union at the time, saying, gee, wouldn't it be cool if we could go to the moon? And by the way, we'll prove that we're better than the Soviets because we did it and they didn't, kind of thing. It was a race to the moon, right? But I'm wondering now if, and Alan, this is potentially focused on your comments with your international sort of societies and such. Are we at the point now with the internet that we can sort of grab, I mean, not only that, but also, people like Shirley Porter and Elon Musk, who's a little misguided and wants to go to Mars, but has huge resources. Because the way the government has been controlling the scientific community is to say, we hold the purse strings. You have good ideas, but we're going to tell you what passes muster by just not funding things, starving things we're not interested in, and funding things we are interested in. But are we at the stage now with international collaborations and with foundations where we can start to dictate and make more rational decisions in the face of, the Trumps of the world who are, climate deniers and such? Could we start funding or building our own coalitions? Not just lip service, gee, we're going to do a project together, but do really big projects together and organize them internationally. Do you see that on the horizon? Because I'm not sure about whether that's really a plausible idea.
So before the answer, we will give another question and then we'll answer.
Do questions.
Okay.
No, let them answer first.
Okay. So you wanna?
Let them answer first.
Okay. Okay. So any of the panel?
So can I just say that the first part of your comment, that, the truth is the public pays for the research. And therefore, I believe the public has a right to be, in part, setting the research agenda. That is to say, we in the scientific community are incredibly smart and brilliant, but in fact, we operate in part in our own self-interest. And we don't do science because it's interesting and provocative. We do it because it'll be useful to humanity, and society has the right to help set the priorities within it. I would say there are disciplines that have done an outstanding job building things together and then talking governments into paying for it. I mean, no money, no mission, right? I mean, you don't get anything done unless somebody's going to pay for it. And so physics is my favorite example, and particularly actually astrophysics and astronomy are incredibly capable of setting their own scientific priorities and then talking the people who pay into paying for them in order. The rest of science has this sort of competing with each other model, and that works against it. But if we're going to learn how to do what you just said, I think we need to take lessons from the physicists who are mostly the astronomers, I apologize, who are really good at it. And they come up, they state their priorities, and boom, you watch the American government pay for their priorities in order. We're going to eat?
Okay. I'm coming back to you.
Thanks. So, Dr. Trent was talking earlier about how we are effectively running out of stuff to sustain ourselves, so we're looking for better ways to do more sustainable agriculture and whatnot. So on the one hand, we have this population that can't seem to stop itself from growing every year. But on the other hand, we have people like Dr. Burr, and you talked about actively looking to prolong human life. So I'm asking, was the sweet spot between kind of having it really hard for ourselves to sustain ourselves, but also looking for ways to live forever?
Well, nobody I know is trying to to make us live forever. I mean, we are just what we are doing now with science is basically avoiding the early mortality that was caused by many diseases that we can avoid. That's what we're trying to do. I mean, but yesterday with someone talked about genes that may prolong a lifespan, and that science is ongoing. I mean, the debate is always whether there is a limit to a biological limit to how long people can live, and there are two answers to that. The first question, I think the real answer is we don't know. What we have seen is that life expectancy during the last 250 years has gone up linearly. And in the 80s, we thought that that was the limit, but people live longer, so we have to change the limit. And now people live longer, so we have to change the limit again. So we don't know exactly what it is. There are people that say, oh, yes, okay, but we are still in the 80s, 90s. There's no way you can go beyond 120. And I don't know. I mean, that's what we know today.
Maybe I'll respond to this too. I think we have, like in Singapore, 2-3 years ago, when I went to the Ministry of Health to talk about healthcare projects. Like it is always about clinical care. Like make sure that the patient is well and so on. But in the last 2 years, the direction has changed. We are actually looking at the social aspects of healthcare. So there are a lot of other, like outcomes that we may want to actually measure. So one of the things in terms of aging, like we talk about aging as something negative. But there are also other things about aging that we want to actually focus on. So in the RISE, the institute that I run is actually looking at one aspect of, of aging from the social integration and education perspective on, graceful aging, productive aging, successful aging. I think there are certain things that we can also begin to have a discussion with the funding agencies, the communities, to say that there are certain things that, if we were to do well, the returns in investment is actually not just in terms of dollars and but the policymakers, yes, they may want to actually look at, the bottom line is actually, the dollar value, but, the quality of life, how people are actually been able to age well, live well, and also age smart, and begin to enjoy the life. Whether we want to actually have a different way in which we talk about some of these issues, that might actually help to also invite, sponsors, and investors and so on. So it's just a thought, could we actually be looking at something from a different perspective?
So I want to say one thing, and I'm looking, I got the watch going here. So we know from a bunch of recent studies, one of the biggest, and we'll, I'm sure this will come up tomorrow, about chronic illnesses and that longevity, lifespan issue, loneliness. All right? So if I had to add something to an agenda that we should focus on, it would be loneliness, and it is the invisibility of individuals as they age. So when we look across scientific studies, we are not only including older adults, but because they are older, they then they will tell in lots and lots of studies, particularly through the age-friendly cities movement, through the World Health Organization, that they feel invisible. And that could be because they're not engaging, they're recipients of care, they're not seen as care providers, they are not seen as active social activists, they're receiving volunteer care, they're not counted in employment numbers because they're not working full time, even though they could be working both for compensation or non-compensation. Anyway, it's the issue of invisibility, and I'm interested in across all ages, particularly older adults, but it's invisibility of people across their entire lifespan. So I got the look. I'm going to stop talking. Thank you.
I think, I'm sorry, but we have to stop. I'm sure we can go on. I'm sorry that maybe because of tomorrow and maybe because of other reasons, we focused more on aging, but our project here at the Dead Sea with embryonic and with, a lot of other things, and even just young people. So the healthy, like Eliora suggested, the healthy aging of the Dead Sea is very important to keep this very special region and learn more about this area and utilize. And I do hope, and I thank you for taking the 2.5 days and waiting for, joining and collaborating. And I do hope that each and every one of you got his lesson from nature. And I want to hear more about that and join forces. So next year, everybody of us will present the joint project. And I want to thank you and the president of Tel Aviv that was here. We had 2 presidents, 2.5 days, which is a very special thing. To have the president of Potsdam that was 1 day, and the president of Tel Aviv that was 2.5 days. And Professor Klafter, our president, supported both this Dead Sea Research Institute establishment and the aging. And I think this is not usual, and we really appreciate those devotion and dedication of everybody who was involved in those projects. And I thank you all very much for the ongoing support for so many years. And last but not least, I want to thank, the people who made it happen. And we have there Gil Sharon, who taped the whole meeting. And therefore, we will be able to come back to the lectures and listen again. Maybe we were too tired, we didn't understand, and get another lesson. And Dudu, who was really as I said, every day, he takes care of this institute every day, but not only in this meeting as well. And now, thank you all. Now it's our role to take it to the next step. And the first step now is to get and eat. So we have lunch.
But before
and
we
thank you very much.
Before we go, everybody thanked Mira, but I was asked in particular to give Mira.
Thank you so much.
So it was Mira's eclectic worldview that helped everybody come together in this amazing group of people with so many different perspectives on life, and that just was a reflection of your psyche.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a real privilege. You gave me the privilege, and now it's our role to go on.